Ms Graham.
Thank you. I'd like to go back to something that we touched on the first day you gave evidence.
Yes.
And it was under reference to the briefing paper, which was dated the 3rd of May.
Yes.
And it was addressed for your attention,
Indeed,
effectively.
yes.
Can we look at that for a moment? PIRC 03694. And I think when we looked at it, I said briefing note for Director of Investigations. You were actually on holiday on this date.
I was, yes.
You didn't come back till the 5th of May.
The 5th of May.
But it was prepared by Mr Harrower.
Yes.
In relation to the events. And if we can look at page 2, and I'm interested in paragraph 4, I think we referred to this earlier, just the first line really, first couple of lines. It was reported that as the officers drove into Hayfield Road, they saw the now deceased coming towards them as the vehicles came to a halt. They could clearly see he was in possession of a knife and was making his way towards them. And as it goes on, some of the officers, unknown how many at the stage, drew their police issue batons. At least one of the officers also drew their pava spray and issued a warning to the now deceased, who continued to come forward. And I think I asked you about this at the time, and if I'm correct, you said that when you came back to work on the 5th of May, you knew that Mr Bio did not clearly have a knife in his hands.
I think that is my recollection at some stage on the 5th of May that it had been determined that the knife, a knife had been found nearby, but he did not have a knife in his hand.
Thank you. Can I ask you to look at something else now, please? It's part of the management policy log, which is PIRC 04154, and I'm interested in page 60 of the PDF, which is decision 40 in the policy log. We've heard from Mr McSporran, as I may have already said, that certain letters or correspondence or emails are inserted in between
Yes.
the decisions in the policy log.
Yes.
So there's the handwritten decision and the reasons, and then some of the letters appear at the relevant section. Yes. And this is one of those letters. Okay. And so I'd just like you to look at this. It's a letter from Criminal Allegations Against the Police Division. It's dated the 18th of May 2015, so approximately a couple of weeks after the events. Yes. It's addressed to Miss Kate Frame, and I think if we look at the bottom of the page, we see it's from Les Brown, who was the head of Cap D. And you'll see that it says, there was a meeting with the Lord Advocate and the family on the 14th of May, and we've looked at minutes from that date. Yes. In relation to a PIRC meeting that day. During the meeting, the family and their legal representative highlighted concerns that the family had in relation to the circumstances of the death and the actions of Police Scotland officers, particularly in relation to the immediate aftermath of the death. I have received a letter from solicitors highlighting a number of issues and requesting information. I have summarised these in the attached document, and I would be grateful if you would factor these into the ongoing investigation and revert to me with the information requested, particularly in relation to the provision of documentation. So this, would you have interpreted this as part of the instructions from Crown Office?
Yes. To
be incorporated into the investigation?
Absolutely, yes.
And then if we can look at the note at the rear of this this letter, and you see this page, it says a request that solicitors for the family be provided with. Do you see that?
Yes.
There's this sort of, it's just a sheet with some points noted on it that is attached to the letter. And if we could look at paragraph 2, a request that solicitors for the family be provided with the information given to those conducting the post-mortem examination, and in particular the briefing paper prepared, said here prepared by SIO Pat Campbell.
Yes. Solicitors
for the family have requested that the PIRC investigation should cover the contents of the information contained within the briefing paper prepared by the SIO, and in particular why he did not advise PIRC of the following. And I'd like to look at the bullet points, and in particular the 5th bullet point. And you'll see that it says, the report claims that a large knife was being carried. It appears to be based on a report rather than fact. Now, you might remember that in the briefing note I just asked you to look at, it said it was reported that as the officers drove into Hayfield Road, they saw the now deceased coming towards them as the vehicles came to a halt. They could clearly see he was in possession of a knife and was making his way towards them. So that entry in that briefing note, which we've now heard evidence was drafted by Mr. Harrower, also refers to it was reported
Yes.
that he was clearly seen to be carrying a knife. Now, we know at this time officers' statements were not available.
That's correct.
And I'm wondering, from your recollection of events at this time, was there an investigation into where that report came from about the police clearly seeing that he was carrying a knife? And was that part of the investigation?
Well, I think from memory, there was an instruction from Crown to try and determine where details of the initial police contact and the matters surrounding that. I'm sure from memory that formed part of an instruction from Crown, and I would imagine therefore that would include coverage of that bullet point or similar.
Did PIRC investigate where the source or investigate the source or where the information came from?
My understanding is they made attempts to.
Right.
And
What
get
came of
information.
those attempts?
Again, from memory, I don't think it was successful.
Right.
I may be wrong, but I don't think there was success.
Did they ever find out?
Not so far as I'm aware, from memory.
Right. Thank you very much. Could you give me a moment, please?
Yes.
Thank you very much. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Are there any Rule 9 applications? That's Miss Mitchell and the Dean. Mr. Mitchell, would you withdraw to the witness room, please?
There are two issues that I would like to explore with this witness, if that will be allowed. The first issue, it relates to Mr. Mitchell's recollection of lots of conversations being had with Kate Frame, and it was put to her, to him, that conversations may have been had around the use of officers' language, in particular use of the word coloured. What I would like to ask this witness is whether or not there were conversations around the issue of identifying the person's colour of skin and linking it with terrorism. The reason for that is that would be an issue of racial profiling, and it would no doubt stand out to this witness. And also that the witness, Kate Frame, had said that she had reservations about not putting this in, but was persuaded by his expertise not to do so, or his experience, in fact. And she also mentioned the fact that there was pressure to get the report to the Crown. So it's to try and put those specifics to the witness to see whether or not he has any recollection around that particular issue. The second and much shorter question relates to comments that he made twice about the fact that there was more discussion around style than content, and I wish to ask him what he meant by that in relation to the preparation of the PIRC report.
Thank you. If you'd like to return to your seat now.
My Lord, the single issue on which I seek permission to ask questions of the witness relates to the question of status of the officers in the period between the 7th of May and the 2nd of June. Your Lordship will recall allowing this line of questions with S.I. Little, and your Lordship will also recall that I, in discussion with Mr. Little, suggested to him that some of the matters were perhaps more for Mr. Mitchell, and I seek to pick those matters up with him.
Thank you.
Obliged.
Well, I shall allow Ms Mitchell to pursue the first line of questioning in relation to the discussions as to race. I would not be assisted by a further discussion about style and content, so I shall refuse the second application. I shall allow the Dean's application. So we'll start with Ms Mitchell. We have the witness back, please. Mr Mitchell, Miss Mitchell, who represents the families of Sheku Bayo, has some questions for
Lord.
Ms Mitchell.
You were asked earlier by my learned friend, counsel to the inquiry, if you remembered having any conversations with Kate Frame, specifically about the use of language in officer statements. And you responded, there was a lot of discussion about the style of the report more than the content. I want to ask you whether or not you remember a particular conversation. I'm going to highlight from that what Ms Frame said in her evidence to see if that assists. Did you watch Ms Frame's evidence?
Just parts of it. No.
Well, I'll refresh your memory
thank you,
then in
please.
relation to those matters. So the evidence of Ms Frame was that she saw the racist terminology, the word coloured, and the possibility of his skin colour being linked with terrorism.
Yes.
And that was quite early on after the statements had been taken. She said that she instructed Mr McSporran, or that she had a discussion with Mr McSporran, to be more precise, to make further inquiries about it. And it wasn't until the document was returned to her in the format that it was about to just be sent off to the Crown, that she realised that there had been no input in relation to race.
All right.
She then said that she had a conversation with you. So this conversation would be shortly before the document was going to be sent to the Crown. And it not only centred around the word coloured, but it also centred around the issue of one of the statements which one could draw an inference that they were linking terrorism with the colour of someone's skin. Do you recall any conversation of that sort?
No, but having said that, I'm not going to sit here and say that it didn't happen. I just do not remember a discussion just so specific as that.
Would you appreciate that if you had this conversation, essentially what was being spoken about was an issue of racial profiling?
Yes.
And in that instance, wouldn't it have been important to flag that up as a specific issue?
Yes, and I did think I said earlier that even if my answer to Ms Frame was that I felt that it related to misconduct, that if it was there and in their statements, I did not have a strong opinion, or would not have had a strong opinion about not including it in the report.
Got no further questions.
Thank you. If you return to your seat, please. Mr Mitchell, the Dean of Faculty represents Scottish Police Federation and certain of the attending officers.
My lord.
Pleasure, Lord. Mr Mitchell, just a few questions from me, please, all related to this question of the status of the officers
indeed.
in between May, June.
Yes.
Yes.
okay.
This was a Crown-led inquiry.
It was
yes?
indeed, yes.
So direction was taken from Crown Office,
Yes.
and in particular from Les Brown, who was head of Cap D.
Les Brown had been given to us as our point of contact.
Could we have on screen, please, a document you've looked at already, PIRC 03710. And this is noted as a PIRC incident message, I think completed by yourself, is that right, on the 7th of May?
That's correct, yes.
And if we just scroll down that page, please. And we see there, I've spoken with Peter Watson, who acts for 9 police officers involved in the Kirkcaldy death. Mr. Bio, Mr. Watson has advised the officers not to give operational statements whilst their status is, I think that should be unknown.
I think it's my writing. Apologies.
He states that this will be the position until the full results of the post-mortem examination are known. So do you agree with me that what Professor Watson is saying there to you, as noted on the 7th of May, is not we are giving no statements, it's we are not giving statements until the status is known?
Till the result of the post-mortem is known.
Yeah, and until the status is known, yes?
Yes, but I made it quite clear to him that their status was that of witness.
Yeah. Do you agree with me that what Professor Watson is saying there is not we're giving no statements, we're giving no statements until we've got the post-mortem and the status is known? That's what you've noted, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Now, we've looked at this with other witnesses, but the question of status is important.
Absolutely,
Do you agree with
yes.
me? Yeah, okay. I'll be corrected if I'm wrong, but there's nothing in writing from PIRC confirming the status of the officers until the 2nd of June.
That's correct.
You agree with that? Okay. You were in the practice of recording telephone calls. We see that here, yeah?
Yes, if it was something that was pertinent to the investigation, so that it was listed there, yes.
Yeah. And indeed, we've looked at several of your written notes of telephone calls already in your evidence. Do you agree with me? There's no sign of any written record of a telephone call in which you say, I confirmed to Professor Watson that the status of the officers was as witness.
Not so specific as that, yeah.
Well, anything even coming close to that, Mr. Mitchell?
If that's the case, that's the case.
Can we have on screen, please, the third page of that, the same document? This is the email that you refer to.
Yes.
And you've, this is 7th May 2015 at 11:29. And this is an email originally from Mr. Watson to Mr. Hardy, and Mr. Hardy seems to have, or rather Mr. Watson has forwarded it to you as well. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
I represent all 9 officers involved in the incident, given to believe instructions have been given by you or someone connected with this inquiry. Officers to be told they're compelled to provide statements. This is not correct. You should seek advice. You can ask them to provide statements. My advice is that they do not do so until their status is clarified. Yes?
Yes.
Now, that email is sent to you the following minute by Mr. Watson, as we see if we just move the page down a little bit. So you've got that at 11:30 on the 7th of May.
Yep.
Where is your email in response saying, Mr. Watson, I've told you time and time again, their status is witness?
I didn't send one. I think I'd made my position quite clear in telephone calls previously.
Well, look, if the position is that you have made it clear to Mr. Watson that their position, their status is witness, and you get that email at 11:30 on the 7th of May saying, I've told them they're not to give a statement until their status is clarified, why on earth would you not respond by a simple one-line email saying, I've told you already, status is witness?
I didn't think that was appropriate, that's why.
Well, can you understand why, having sent that email at 11:30 on the 7th of May and having received no response, Professor Watson would have been understandably in the dark as to what the position is as to status?
No, I don't, because I say I've already spoken to him on more than one occasion and made it clear that the position was that the officers would be interviewed as witnesses.
Well, if that's the case, why on earth would he email you saying, I'm not telling them to give a statement until their status is clarified?
I've no idea.
And why on earth would you not respond saying, I've told you?
Because I've already had that discussion.
And yet, and you say, I think, that was repeated thereafter in further telephone calls,
Yes.
but no sign of any record, any written record of those telephone calls.
Well, any telephone call I had with Mr. Watson, yes, it was either followed up by an email from him or I put a message into the system.
Well, do we have any record of any telephone call between you and Professor Watson saying, status witness?
I think, did I not say the first one that I had told him that the officers were witnesses?
Do you have the one that we've just looked at?
No, the previous message.
Well,
On the 5th.
you saw in your course of your evidence earlier today a letter from the Commissioner, yes, setting out the various steps that she said had been taken to obtain statements.
Yes,
And you remember there was a total of 6.
yes,
The 5th was on the 7th of May and the
Okay.
6th was on the 2nd of June, yes?
yeah.
Your position is, despite what we've got on the screen here, status as witness was clear on the 7th of May, yes? If you were, whether in your former guise as a police officer or in your latter guise as a PIRC investigator, if you asked a witness for a witness statement and they refused, you'd have noted that in a notebook or in a file, yes?
Not necessarily, no.
Okay. Did you or anyone at PIRC, after the 7th of May and before the 2nd of June, approach any of the officers asking them for a statement?
After this,
After the 7th of May and before the 2nd of June?
No, I didn't, nor did John McSpawn, but we hear that DCI Hardy did on behalf of Mr. McSpawn.
Who was DCI Hardy?
He was a serving police officer.
Police officer.
Yes.
What does the I in PIRC stand for?
You know, no, I appreciate that. This was around travel distances, etc., finite resources, and trying to make best use of what we had.
So again, did anyone from PIRC, after the 7th of May and before the 2nd of June, ask any of these officers for a statement?
No.
Despite the fact that you claim their status as witness had been made clear?
I don't claim it, it's a matter of fact.
Let's look at what happened on the 2nd of June, can we please?
Yes.
PIRC 03726. Again, this is an incident message. Les Brown, see that?
Yes.
We scroll down, please. And do we see, before we look at the text in the box, this is a document prepared by you.
Yes, indeed, yes.
I telephoned Mr. Les Brown, CAAPD,
Yeah.
to inform him that following discussion with Mr. David Kennedy, Police Scotland Federation, and a subsequent meeting between Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Peter Watson, solicitor acting on behalf of the police officers involved in the arrest process, it had been suggested by the Federation that the officers would make themselves available for interview if, scroll down please, their status was confirmed as that of a witness. Mr. Brown agreed to consider the matter, seek further direction from Crown Office and respond.
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
That's at 10:05 on the 2nd of June
Yep.
2015. Yes?
Yes.
So on the 2nd of June, when you speak with Mr. Kennedy of the Federation and Mr. Watson, solicitor for the 9 officers,
Yes.
who say to you, we need clarification of status, your response, Mr. Mitchell, is not, How many times do I need to tell you? Your response is, let me phone Les Brown. Yes?
No, I think I agreed that that would be sensible for me to respond saying, yes, they would be treated as witnesses. However, Mr. Les Brown was our point of contact within Crown. As a matter of courtesy, I just sent him a message.
What you've noted here, Mr. Mitchell, can we go back up the screen, please? What you've noted here, contemporaneously, the officers would make themselves available for interview if,
Yeah.
scroll down please, if their status was confirmed as that of a witness.
That's correct.
So, you're sitting there with a solicitor and the head of the Federation, and they're saying to you, the officers will make themselves available if status is
Sorry,
confirmed.
you say I'm sitting there with them?
Well, you're in a discussion with them, yes?
Well, not at that time. I'd had the discussion with them by then. That was post the gone. It was a telephone call that I received
Yeah, when?
before I sent that message to Les Brown.
When? That day?
I believe so, yes.
Yes, right, okay. So you've got a conversation with them that day,
I'd had a conversation with them that day, yes.
and they say to you,
Yep.
very clearly, and you've noted it,
Yes,
we will submit to statement if status is confirmed.
Yep.
And your response is not, I've told you already, status is witness. Your response is, I need to speak to Les Brown, and that's exactly what I'll do. Yes?
no, I don't think that was my response. I think I responded saying, yes, they are witnesses, and out of courtesy I let Les Brown know that, and I did query whether the Crown had a concern around that. Now, if that had been the case and the Crown had come back and said, no, things have changed and we don't, well, at the end of the day, Mr. Watson would have been told that, but that wasn't the position.
Mr. Brown agreed to consider the matter, seek further direction from Crown Office and respond.
Yes.
Yes? You can't seriously be contending in a Crown-led inquiry, Mr. Mitchell, that the question of status was confirmed in light of this document until Mr. Brown confirmed
Well,
what the status was.
Rightly or wrongly, sir, I took that decision that they were witnesses. Now, if the situation had been that Mr. Brown had come back and said that things have changed dramatically and we no longer consider them to be witnesses, I would have had to go back to the Federation and back to Mr. Watson and make that clear to him. My concern at that moment in time was missing the opportunity to get important statements on paper from those officers. And whether that's a right or wrong decision, it's the decision I made.
Okay, let's try and tie this together, can we? As at the 7th of May,
Yes,
in the document that you prepared, you
Yeah.
know, and you know from the email, that Peter Watson is saying, Professor Watson is saying, I need to know the status. Yes?
yes.
You don't respond to that by email. We're agreed on that.
No, you know, I wish now that I had put something right, but the long and the short of it is, I was speaking to the gentleman on the telephone, and I was making my point as clear as I possibly could around his client's status.
My question was, you don't respond to that email.
No,
Do
I
you agree
didn't
with
respond to an email. No, I didn't. You're right.
that? You say that there was further telephone conversation, but you're unable to give us any written record of any such telephone conversation. Yes?
There was one, I think, is that not that message out of the sound? I spoke with Mr. Watson. I phoned him back and I said to him, I know what you're saying about these officers not providing, however, we're going to I'll have them approached directly. I told them that.
You're unable to give us any written record of a telephone conversation in which you confirm status.
Okay, yeah, I'll get with that.
Okay. And on the 7th of June, Mr. Kennedy of the Federation calls you and asking for confirmation of status, and your response is, I need to speak to
On the
Les Brown.
2nd of June,
2nd of June.
yes.
And as soon
I didn't say that to David Kennedy that I needed to confirm. I responded very quickly saying, yes, they are witnesses. I then spoke or sent an email to Les Brown, as I say, through courtesy. if he had come back and said, no, the position's changed, I would have had to go back to Peter Watson, but that wasn't the case.
And as you indicated in the document still on screen you would do, Mr Brown agreed to consider the matter, seek further direction and respond.
Yeah.
Mr Brown then came back to you and said, status as witness, yes?
Yes.
You then passed that on to Professor Watson, yes?
I'm not sure about that. I think that the situation was is that it had been confirmed that they were witnesses, and it had only been if Les Brown had come back and said, no, that is not the position, that I'd have gone back to Mr Watson.
Well, presumably you accept, we can look at the documents if we need to, but presumably you accept that after Mr Brown came back to you,
Yeah.
as you agree he did,
Yeah.
you passed that on to Professor Watson.
If that's it and I'm mistaken, yes, okay.
Yeah. And you did that later that day, yes?
Okay, yeah.
And very shortly after that, agreement was given that the officers would attend for statements, yes?
Okay, yes.
Yes, thank you. Please, Lord.
Thank you very much, Mr Mitchell, for coming to give evidence to the inquiry. I'm very grateful for your time over a number of days. The inquiry is about to adjourn and you'll then be free to go.
Thank you, my lord.
Inquiry will adjourn.